Hey guys, it's Konpeki, and in this video, I'll go over one obscure tip for every agent that you probably didn't know. Starting with Omen. Did you know that on Abyss, you can jump off the map, quickly ult away, and then cancel your ult and TP back up to the surface? Even though it looks like you can continue falling, your movement freezes from the moment you press ult. So as soon as you cancel it, you can immediately TP back to safety as long as you're quick enough. This won't be useful every game, probably not even once every 3 games, but if you're ever in a post-plant scenario on Abyss and you have your ultimate, maybe you can pull out this silly move. Now, maybe this isn't a surprise to any hardcore Jett mains, but it's an important tip to realize nonetheless. That's because there's a big difference between updraft dash and dash updraft. Using updraft first and then dashing is great for movement, especially if you add in a jump as well. You can reach higher places more easily, and you can then capitalize off of those positions by taking fights from unexpected angles. However, if you do a dash followed by an updraft, you're usually a bit harder to hit, and most importantly, you actually pull out your gun much faster. The reason for that is simple. If you press updraft, your gun is only removed for a quick second, and you can actually already start firing mid-air. But on the contrary, if you're dashing, you can never actually fire mid-dash. So if you need to hit a difficult jump like Ascent A main to generator, maybe you're better off doing a jump, updraft, dash combo in that order. But if you want to dash updraft in for a quick kill and the jump isn't too hard for you, or you just want to make yourself hard to hit with knives, make sure you dash first and then updraft. One other tip that actually applies to all agents is that if you're truly serious about improving in Valorant and you have a strong willingness to learn and you want to see how far you can go with the game, you should consider joining the Immortal Roadmap program. Inside our premium coaching program, my team of Radiant and VCT coaches can help you rank up 500 RR in just 10 weeks, guaranteed, or you get your money back. Don't believe me? Check out these players who hit Radiant after being stuck in Immortal for multiple episodes. The next cohort starts in 3 weeks, and there are 11 spots left out of 80. So if you're serious about improving in Valorant and want to learn from the best of the best, message me the word improve on Discord to see if we'd be a good fit. Now back to the agents. We all have experienced how annoying retakes can sometimes be, especially on certain maps. I mean, it's why we're seeing changes to Sunset. But if you play Sage, there's a clever way to deal with some of the more annoying retakes. By placing your wall sideways, your enemies need to break 4 pieces of your wall, not just 1, in order to stop you from defusing. You can use this trick everywhere, but it's really strong on places like Sunset B site, Haven B and C site, both Icebox sites, and many other spots. And if you're not convinced, just look at Pro Play, since it won Paper Rex a crucial eco round in a game they should have lost to Foot, and that's when they didn't even place the wall in the most optimal way. On the topic of walls, did you know that your Viper wall extends a little bit past what the indicator on the radar shows? I have no idea how this hasn't been fully fixed, since Viper has been in the game since the very start, but at any rate, it's still a thing, and it's good to keep in mind when you're placing your walls. I personally find that this extra range can be helpful, especially on the Icebox B-site attack wall. Breach is one of those agents where people regularly complain about how hard it is to dodge his flashes, and that's fair enough. His flashes are pretty annoying. So why not make it even worse? Because you can actually hide his flash in the aftershock. Of course, you don't want to overuse your aftershock and flash combo every single time, but if an angle you plan on aftershocking is a pretty good spot to flash anyway, like maybe the short corner on Bind or the right side of Ascent A main, then why not? With Astra seeing her start count increase lately, she's actually pretty good again. So if you plan on playing her, it's probably good to know that her gravity well is strongly affected by slows. If there's no slow, people can counteract the suck pretty easily, but if there's a slow, it's just impossible. The reason this is so important now is because Vice got added, and even though her slow only slows for 15%, it's still enough to be comboed with Astra's gravity well. So if you're playing Astra and you have a Vice on your team, make sure to coordinate your util because it'll be a really strong combo no matter if it's on attack or defense. Now, when it comes to post plans, it happens so often that someone barely diffuses with like a second remaining. And if you run into that situation, it's important to remember that your raise satchels, if you have any left after entering a site, can be used to get people off the spike. In some cases, even after you're already dead. So if you're ever left to clutch, don't forget that you have this ability. Another duelist with a surprisingly strong post-plant potential is ISO. Not only can you throw your vulnerables through smokes to help your team spamming anyone on the plant, but if you're ever left in a 2v1 or similar post-plant, you can even use your ultimate. This will force someone off the defuse to stall, but that's not all, because it even sets up your teammate for an easy kill in case you do the classic whiff on the ISO ult. So if you're in a favored or even an equal post-plant scenario, don't be afraid to use your ultimate. Best case, you stop the defuse, but even if you don't, you'll still end up yoinking one of the diffuser's bodyguards, which is still a win. Now for KO. There are some interesting things I wanted to go over in regards to his flash mechanics. First, I already mentioned in one of my previous videos that the flash travels about 28 meters. So if you want to make an on-the-fly pop flash, you can do that by pinging the wall close to the angle you want to flash and then throwing your flash when you're between 25 to 27 meters away from your ping. But there's more, because your flash is also affected by movement. If you're running backwards, you can use the same trick for 15 to 17 meters, and if you're running forward, it's roughly 35 to 37 meters. Interestingly though, your flash isn't affected by sideways movement, so you can use that to your advantage to go for quick flashes where you don't need to expose your body for long. If you've watched the latest Champions event, you probably saw just how strong sitting back and simply spamming enemies who try to defuse through smokes truly is. It was getting abused on Sunset beyond belief, but also on maps like Haven or even Bind and Ascent, it works incredibly well. But why stop at just being cringe, because you can actually make this even more powerful. If you're on Cypher, you can not only place cages to smoke yourself off and allow yourself to spam any players, especially if you have a cam on the plant, but if you're smart about it, you can even place a trip in main in case any enemies want to push you. Since your trip is so passive, enemies don't tend to expect it, allowing you to truly spam to your heart's content with very little risk involved. As for Clove, I don't think this tip will win you game after game, but it's pretty interesting that the Yoru clone doesn't seem to be affected by your metal. If you ever see 2 Yoros on screen and only one is hit by your metal, you'll know which one is which. Moving on to Brimstone. Enemies cannot actually see the outline of your stim beacon like you and your teammates can. So if you hide it somewhere slightly tucked away, like in ramps, you can surprise your enemies with a nasty rapid fire quick movement crossfire, which is quite useful in post plants or if enemies are rushing you down. For Vice, you might already know this if you watched my Vice guide, but for some reason the flash doesn't actually have a cooldown after picking it up if you've already flashed at least once. I think the reason why this works is that the recall cooldown is identical to the flash cooldown itself. So if you flash and pick it up 5 seconds later, you'll keep the 15-second cooldown it had from flashing. But as I mentioned, it also works if the flash cooldown is already down to 0 and ready for use again. So since the flash cooldown is pretty short anyways, maybe if you see 5 enemies spotted on the other side of the map, use your flash first and just leave it on the wall. If enemies are back to your site 30 seconds later, your cooldown is long over. But if they slowly commit to the site they were originally spotted, you'll still benefit as you'll be able to recall and replace your flash without a cooldown. Now, if you keep a close eye on the patch notes, you've seen this, but Chamber got buffed again, and his TP range is better than it's ever been before. Just have a look and try him out, because his get out of the jail free card is in full force again, and Chamber now has an insane amount of freedom when it comes to his TP. I mean, just look at this. With a single pretty generic TP placed in market, you can play a bunch of aggressive positions around mid, site, and even B main. Of course, Chamber isn't the only agent that can teleport. Yoru can do that too. But what's really weird about his teleport is that in the Yoru versus Yoru matchup, there seems to be some odd stuff going on with his gloves. I've been testing this in a custom game for like 20 minutes and it doesn't seem to always work, but at the very least, more often than not, your gloves start glowing when the enemy Yoru uses their gate crash. I'd love to know what exactly is going on here, but if you randomly see your gloves start glowing, it's good to be extra wary of a Yoru TP. When you're using your Gecko ult, Thrash will move forward even if you're not holding W, which is nice because it allows you to bunny hop pretty effectively, which will make it more difficult for your enemies to break. Oh, and don't forget that you can click mouse 1 twice in order to activate your detain mid-air sooner, so don't risk overshooting your ult past your opponents. Now, I know this is something that feels really unnatural and will take some getting used to, but now that Reyna heals permanent shields, it's now actually not that bad to go for a Vandal no armor or especially a Vandal light shield buy. So if you have enough cash for a Vandal hero buy without sacrificing your economy for the next round, you can have some serious snowball potential. I think everyone knows that you can let go of sky flashes and let them travel along the wall to create kill flashes, but sometimes those flashes aren't possible. So in those situations, you can actually look all the way down, move your mouse slightly forward, and let your bird travel along the ground. It'll travel quite slowly, so you should have plenty of time to catch up and swing with it. Now, when it comes to Neon, this is another thing that has changed somewhat recently, but you're now fully accurate while sliding. And if you're not abusing that already, you really should be. Neon is really strong now. We're constantly seeing her in pro play, and also in ranked, you can do some nasty things with her. Practice her slide shooting in the range and team deathmatch, and maybe even consider using weapons like the sliding Odin if you really want to frustrate your enemies. If you're running into the situation where it's hard to hit sites because you keep getting util dumped, this is where Sova's recon dart can come in quite handy. Everyone knows that Sova's dart refreshes, but still, people have quite a bit of respect for it, especially if it's comboed with at least one smoke. So if you don't mind playing slow, fake sites early and let your enemies waste their abilities first before re-hitting the same site or rotating to hit the other site. Now, Phoenix players always seem to prefer to use their molly as opposed to their wall when it comes to getting heals, but actually, both abilities heal you for exactly 50, though the wall is a bit slower to get you there. If you've been using the molly purely because you thought it healed for more, it's time to stop doing that. It just does it faster. Now, for all of you Deadlock mains out there, did you know that there are actually numerous other Sentinels in the game? You got like Cypher, Killjoy, even the newly added Vice. There are really a lot of options out there. But if you're still insistent on playing her, maybe learn some retake lineups for your barrier mesh and consider occasionally playing around your trip on attack. If enemies try to sneak past it, they'll probably feel like they've outplayed you already, and you can surprise them pretty easily. As for Fade, if you plan on using your ult, it's a good idea to try and save your haunt until after you use your Nightfall. As soon as enemies are hit by the ult, not only do they lose their hearing, but they'll also have their radar blocked. This means that if you hit them with the haunt right after, it'll be pretty hard to counter. So you can really capitalize off of your temporary wall hacks. For Killjoy, I have two small tips. Firstly, you can use your radar and movement circle to throw lineups on the fly. It's pretty useful for post plants. But also, remember that you are the premier sheriff user when it comes to attack pistol rounds. Enjoy getting your kills with just 2 body shots. Finally, for Valorant's most loved agent, Harbor. It's important to note that the ult will make a different sound depending on whether or not it hits any opponents. Listen out for the gong sound. And if there's no one there, feel free to run in without much care. That'll be all. Thanks for watching.